Hello everyone, The Skilled Roy here, back with another custom cards video. It's been about 2 weeks since I announced the contest, Tales from Another World, and we have gotten a ton of submissions. In total we have 19 super solid submissions, and I really love basically all of them. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the original video, first of all, please go watch that so you can get context. But if you haven't, real quick summary. Your goal with this contest was to take any card currently in the game and reimagine either the card, the character, or whatever into another region. So for example, in my examples, I made Cythria and other regions such as Ionia or Bilgewater, and your goal as a designer was to do basically the same thing. Now, let's talk about how we're handling the rest of this contest now that the submissions are in. I am not going to be rating or even giving any commentary on any of these cards. Instead, these cards are going to be presented to you completely anonymously with their author's critiques and wording all there as well. Then, if you guys want to vote on these cards, another Google form will be posted. You're going to choose your top 3 cards and then rate them on the 4 categories that I have there. Once the ratings are in, I will tally them all up and we'll have our top 3 winners. At that point, I will probably pick and choose a couple that I really enjoyed, as well as present the winners and then rate them and do all my usual thing with that. But until then, here we go. Tales from Another World, custom card contest number 1. Let's see the entries. First up, we have Phoenix Maiden. 4 mana 2/4 with round start heal everything 2. It is located in Targon. The author has this to say. For as long as Ember Maiden has been in the game, I have had a hankering for a version of her that healed instead of dealing damage, just because I'm the type that likes keeping my units alive. Then I considered, hey, Soraka's going to exist soon and she'd love a card like that, right? An Ember Maiden who builds things up in the service of Runeterra's Goat Lady instead of burning it down for its Boar Lady. Next card is Battle Bard, 3 mana 3/3 in Ionia. Play, deal 1 to me. I have double attack while I have 3 or more health. The author had this to say. Senna is a 3-cost follower with quick attack that has a conditional way to get double attack. I redesigned this idea for an Ionia follower, Battle Bard. Battle Bard starts as a 3/3 quick attack, which takes 1 damage on play, which makes it 2 health like Senna. His condition for double attack is having 3+ health. With Ionia having healing potion, health buffs, and non-play summoning such as retreat, and a barrier to add to ally in hand like Key Guardian, there's various ways for Ionia to meet this 3 health requirement and keep it. Next up we have Luxora, 3 mana 2/3 with Fearsome in Noxus. All of your spells that cost 3+ mana deal 1 extra damage. Their level up condition is, I've seen you cast 4 damage dealing spells. They level up into, all of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. Round start, create a Dark Mimic in hand. Dark Mimic is a 0 mana fast speed spell. Create a copy of a damage dealing spell in hand and reduce its cost by 1. Their champion spell is Luxora's Reflective Beam. Deal 2 damage to an enemy and 1 to another. The author has this to say. I wanted to keep the high spell synergy that Lux already has, but give it a twist. I wanted to also give the card flexibility, able to be used in different archetypes and speeds. I also wanted it to synergize well with its region, and I think I've done that. Luxora works well with Swain and many of Noxus' spells. She also works well with Kegs, Gangplank, and Misfortune. The reason she has Fearsome is both for the thematic aspect and to prevent her to be being blocked by small units, pushing extra damage if possible. Next up is the Death Swain, 9 mana 8/4 in Shadow Isles with Fearsome. Double the number of ally Last Breath's effects triggers, play, draw a Hecarim. The author had this to say. Double all the death! A game-ending card for Shadow Isles. Hecarim is a fucking rampant, conquering sadist that came to Isles on a boat, okay? It fits. Next is Raza the Avenger, 9 mana elite, 7/7, in Demacia. He has Challenger and Tough. Play. If an ally died this round, rally and give allies +1/+1 this round. The author had this to say. Raza is one of the coolest monster designs to come out of LOR, but sadly they don't see a lot of play. I thought the avenging mechanic would fit right into Demacia, which already has similar effects, with Vanguard Redeemer, Radiant Guardian, Remembrance. Of course, instead of a kill effect, this effect instead gives +1/+1 to all allies along with Rally, another common mechanic in Demacia. Since Demacia relies heavily on beefy stat lines and board coverage, compared to Tiana, Avenger costs 1 more and a more conditional Rally, but comes with Challenger and the Elite tag and a splash buff to compensate. In my eyes, he's definitely a game ender that exemplifies Demacia's strengths. As for the flavor, I've recontextualized Raza as a massive knight whom his comrades rally to, a tower of steel and muscle that puts his foot down and says, no more. Indeed, when you summon Avenger Raza, it's time to end the fight. The next card is Covert Philanthropist. 3 mana, 3/3 in Demacia. When I'm summoned, all players create a fleeting Loving Light in hand. Loving Light is a 0 mana burst spell. Grant an ally +2/+2. Can't be cast in combat or response to another spell. The author had this to say: Veteran Investigator is one of the small number of cards in the game with a symmetrical effect, allowing both players to draw a card. In Demacia, a region with little card draw, I decided to make an equivalent card that could instead allow them to buff a unit similarly to Laurent Bladekeeper, and redesign the veteran as a rogue but gentle mage that gifted those he met. I believe this design is easier to break parity with than Veteran Investigator, since you can play it when the opponent has no board, play it on a better unit to buff such as Zed, or simply have removal ready for your opponent's buffed unit. So I decided to make it more expensive with a less efficient body. The next card is Annie Rock Soft Monk. 8 mana 6/6 with lifesteal in Ionia. Play, obliterate the top 5 cards of your deck to grant all allies in hand +1/+1 for each spell obliterated. The author had this to say: Karina is a 6/6 with a very powerful effect if deck building is well done. I prefer to keep the same statistics for all the versions I made, and I focused on the effect and decided to translate it onto the hand buff of Ionia. Since the effect has less impact on the board, my card is a little cheaper and has a lifesteal effect as well. As it says in his card text, it's all about balance. You'll need to have a very balanced deck to fully enjoy the effect. Too many followers and the buff will be too weak, and too many spells and too few followers will be buffed. Next up is Charismatic Reckoner, 5 mana 5/5 with Overwhelm and Noxus. When I am targeted and survive, give all allies +1/+0 this round. The author had this to say: Jay Madara, in my mind at least, is a buff target for P and Z. It rewards the player for targeting him by drawing cards, which synergizes with the hyper draw archetype that P and Z has, with its draw cards like Suit Up, Patrol Wardens, and Chief Mechanist Zevi. I wish for this card to keep Jay's identity as a buff target and made its payoff much more relevant to Noxus as a region by supporting the Swarm archetype that it has with cards such as Vision, Arena Battlecaster, and Crowd Favorite. Next up is the 6 mana 4/5 Unbound Keeper in Shadow Isles. Play skill, drain an ally equal to its health and deal the same damage to an enemy. The author had this to say: Tavern Keeper is a card that is a decent blocker for Freljord and even gives a heal as a defensive attribute. This becomes great synergy as Freljord not needing a heal but a unit that heals, so what I'm trying to keep is 1. The heal in some way being a health buff or a heal or a lifesteal for units that don't need to heal or health buffs. 2. A defensive attribute either being a good health stat or removal centered around health. Or 3, some sort of synergy related to the region. Being a Tavern Keeper means having the strong will. As such, this Tavern Keeper survived the Shadow Isles and is now roaming unbound to his tavern. When dealing with the Shadow Isles, the Doom Beast was my reimagined, but instead for a more expensive 6 mana card that has a strong ability and has a defensive heal. Drain effects and health stats were on my mind, so a skill that drains an ally based on the amount of health it has and deals damage based on the amount of damage dealt to the ally by the drain. As such, counterplay would be killing the ally or enemy unit, reducing its health or buff your health, or deny. Late enough to make an impact and late enough for the enemy to have counterplay, this card can be OP or weak, but at least the enemy is given the chance to counter. The next card is Conga Lion, 5 mana 2/4 in Ionia with Challenger. Support: if my supported ally has support, it also supports me. If its supported ally has support, it also supports me and continues for each supported ally in succession. Whenever I'm supported, grant me +0/+1. The author had this to say: The Mountain Sojourner is a unique support chain card that provides massive permanent benefits across your board if you can chain your supports properly. Conga Line repurposes the support chain concept for Ionian sensibilities as a Lulu support card. While both benefit from a board full of supports, Conga Line doesn't directly help its fellow supporters. Instead, it's a disruptive challenger intended to nab an enemy out of formation to protect your fragile supports, or enable your high-power flower children / swole squirrels to go to work on the enemy nexus. Instead of spreading the support love, it pads its own chances of surviving by copying your supports, if chained properly, onto itself. It's also a decent Lulu battery insofar as she needs it. This gives you extra versatility and safety with your support placements. If you got a Pix and a Flower Child, you can have Pix support both the Flower Child and the Conga Lion. Or if you got a Fuzzy Caretaker, he can be both support and be supported by only a single card. Ionian supports are temporary, so these buffs will be fleeting, though its health is padded further by a drip fed of granted health each time it's supported. For balance, I compared Conga Lion to similar challengers at 5 mana rather than Mountain Sojourners. Her mechanics inspired the conga line, but role-wise, they're very different. Originally it had base 2 health, but that left it vulnerable to immediate removal and required 2 picks to even get up to the raw stats of a similar challenger with 1 picks. 4 health means it lags with no supports, matches its cost with 1, and starts pulling ahead stat-wise with 2 or more. The next card is Elise, 5 mana 5/5 in Bilgewater. When I'm summoned, summon a tentacle and toss 2. Whenever an ally dies, summon a tentacle in its place. Level up, I see 3 tentacles in play. Their level up, they become Pirate Queen Elise. Round start, kill the weakest damaged ally and summon a tentacle. When I attack, all tentacles strike my blocker, and they naturally have fearsome. Their champion spell is Elise's Slithering Sensation, a 2 mana fast spell. Deal 1 damage to a unit. If it dies, summon a tentacle and repeat this process once. Tentacles are 1 mana 1/1 sea monsters that, if you have deep, grant me +2/+2. They are not collectible. The author had this to say. Reading in her story, I took the origins of Elise and transformed her from a Noxian noblewoman to a seafaring Bilgewater resident who, instead of finding a spider god to worship, she finds the sea god, Nagakeboros. From her Shadow Isle self, Elise maintains a tribal connection, a threatening board state when developed, and maintains the ability to end a game very quickly if left unchecked. I preserved her ability to create cheap, efficient units in her tribe, but instead choosing sea monster tribal tentacles of the ever-expanding Nagakeboros, and kept her ability to transform once she has seen a board state favor her transformation. Once flipped, Pirate Queen Elise displays her board presence by threatening whoever blocks her to suffer the wrath of her tentacles, but adds the flavor of not only Bilgewater tossing out those who are too weak to keep up, but she herself culls her crew to serve her tentacled god. Next up is Captain Helios, the 8 mana 8/8 with Overwhelm in Targon. Daybreak, cast Zenith Blade onto the 3 other strongest allies. The author had this to say. Each of the Zenith Blades will also be considered Daybroken. Next up is Imperial Tactician, 1 mana 0/3. When I see you damage the enemy nexus for the first time each round, grant me +2/+0. It's a Noxus. The author had this to say. I really like the 1-drop cycle in LOR of cards that start small, but if they sit on the board and a specific action occurs, they get bigger and develop into threats of their own. Soul Shepherd is the card I tried to emulate the most with this concept, and with Imperial Tactician growing +2/+0 when its trigger occurs, just like Soul Shepherd. Noxus cares a lot about dealing Nexus damage, so I thought this card would fit in both flavorfully and thematically with what Noxus is trying to do. Flavorfully in that he gets stronger as you break through the enemy defenses, and thematically in that Noxus cares about dealing Nexus damage. Although there are not as many payoffs in this effect other than Darius. When designing this card, I realized I had to consider 2 very important points. Many Noxian units have more power than health, and an effect that triggers every time the Nexus is damaged is too strong. For the more health than power, the only units with more health than power focus on siege, such as Swain and City Breaker. To accommodate this, I went in the route of a tactician, someone who plans the sieges and thus would make sense for this type of effect. As for the effect, I liked the idea, but since every time was too strong, I went with the route of just every turn. This allows it to play more to its theme, but also helps prevent the card from getting too out of hand too quickly. Plus, I put him at 0 power initially so that he's unable to trigger his own ability immediately, and thus needs help before he can start taking the fight to the enemy. The next card is the 3 mana fast spell, Seastone Blessing, in Bilgewater. Stop all enemy spells and skills targeting an ally. The author had this to say. Currently the only source of spell negation in Bilgewater that I could draw thematically is Fizz. Taking his effect as inspiration, I decided to make a single-use generic version of Deny. While Fizz's effect can operate at burst speed, I decided to make this spell fast so that it would be more interactable/counterable. Since Fizz must first be on the board to use his effect, the opponent is aware when their spells could be negated and will act accordingly. This card's nature as a spell means it could be dropped at any point without much setup, making it difficult for the opponent to work around if it were at burst speed. Even though this has the potential to stop more spells or skills than Deny, I decided to price it at 3 mana due to how limited it is in comparison, along with requiring spells/skills to actually target one of your units. Since it actually requires a unit as a part of its targeting, it can be fizzled if the target unit dies before the spell is able to resolve. Next up, we have the 6 mana card, Erosion Frosthorn, 6 mana 6/6 with Overwhelm in Freljord. Attack, Frostbite all damaged enemies. The author had this to say. Applying a weak synergy card that is strong in another region with a less restricted requirement. Its stats is reserved with a decent body at 6 cost. It provides good curve, especially attacking, thus frostbiting against any big clunky units such as dragons. Additionally, I gave it Overwhelm, which is a +1 for plunder decks. Under Freljord, it allows for more space for deck building, such as comboing with Ember Maiden under Freljord, Bilgewater decks, or even pressuring enemies under Ash decks. Next up, we have the 4-mana card, Towers of Ritual. It's a 4-mana 0/2, with a round start, obliterate the top 2 cards of your deck to grant you 2 empty mana gem this round. It is in Freljord. The author had this to say: "This is a result of attempting to translate the effect of Corina into a ramp-oriented card." Next up is the 3-mana 3/3 card in Demacia, the Undying. When I am summoned after death, if you have an attack token, grant me +2/+2. If you don't, then rally. Last breath, revive me next round start. The author had this to say: "I like in the Undying art/lore that he's calling his troops for the rest of time, but of course in Shadow Isles he doesn't imagine that well. I liked for them to rally in Demacia and also be a very solid blocker in rounds where you're blocking. Versatile and reliable." Next card is the 8-mana 6/6 Starkeeper in Targon. Play Star Radiance 7 times on random allies. Star's Radiance is a skill. Heal an ally 2. If it's fully healed, heal your Nexus 1 instead. The author had this to say about their card: "New Soraka cards inspired me to create Riptide Rex, but as a healing card." Next up is the 8-mana 5/5 Amos the Grim. He has Fearsome in Bilgewater, and he has a Plunder ability. Toss 5 to deal 1 to all enemies and the enemy Nexus for each follower tossed. The author had this to say: "The original design is largely preserved through its effect. While Corina obliterates the top 5 cards of the deck and only cares about spells, Amos obliterates the bottom 5 cards of the deck and only cares about followers. Toss provides an intuitive, thematic, and efficient way of capturing Corina's ability in Bilgewater. I also leveraged Plunder to explore the possibility of reducing Amos's cost to 8 mana, while better embedding the design in Bilgewater's mechanical and thematic context. Since Amos' follower-specific trigger requires a lower deck-building commitment compared to Corina's spell-specific trigger, I chose to reduce his stat line to 5/5. As the design was largely left intact, I spent most of my time developing the story and character behind the card. Particularly, I wanted to the concept of tossing your own followers to make thematic sense. Amos sacrifices his followers to secure the Jaw's cooperation. Some further caveats for the author from here. While the definition of toss specifies non-champion cards, I opted to use follower instead of unit for thematics and at-a-glance clarity. The design is probably okay at a 6/6, but I decided to play it safe. Fearsome was added as a mechanical, but mostly thematic consolation. Welp, and there you have it. That is every single card that was submitted in, and thank you so much everyone who submitted cards. It was an absolutely incredible time sort of piecing this all together and really having our first big contest for the Discord. Now, I do say the Discord, unlike the custom subreddit, which has their own weekly contests, I decided to do something for the people in the Discord. So if you're watching this and you're not a part of the Legends of Runeterra Discord, the subreddit one anyways, please come join us in the custom section of that area, and we can sort of get you acclimated and sort of show you all these really cool new designs, and then you can start participating in the future contests like this one as well. But otherwise though, thank you so much for watching. This was a huge labor of love from multiple people in the community, and I really do appreciate you taking your time out to watch the whole thing. And if you'd like to see more content like this, please like the video, subscribe, leave a comment, and give your thoughts on these cards. I would love to hear them all. But otherwise though, thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys again next time. Peace out.